Mr. President of the Republic of Congo, Madam Minister of Tourism and Environment of the Republic of Congo, Mr. Minister of the Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare of Zimbabwe, Madam Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Madam Executive Secretary of the UN Economic Commission for Africa, Mr. Commissioner for Trade and Industry of the African Union Commission, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to participate at this regional forum. The SDGs are the blueprint for our development, regional and global. The prospects for achieving the SDGs have been severely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. It is a health crisis, a human crisis, an economic crisis, and a crisis of development. It is painfully obvious that the developing countries, especially in Africa, have been hit the hardest. Due to existing structural vulnerabilities, African economies have contracted far more than those of the advanced countries. Equitable access to the vaccine remains uncertain. The recession in the developing countries is deep, and with inequalities rising and the financing gap growing, the recession is likely to be prolonged. Due to the increasing needs and declining resources, the financing gap to recover from the COVID crisis and achieve the SDGs has increased from $2.5 trillion to $4.2 trillion. Excellencies, advanced economies have injected over $14 trillion to recover and revive their economies. Developing countries are struggling to mobilize even a fraction of the $1 trillion they are estimated to need urgently to respond to the crisis. Money is available. $378 trillion are held by financial intermediaries. Only 1.1% of this could bridge the $4.2 trillion financing gap facing the developing countries. But it is not being deployed for the SDGs. When I assumed the ECOSOC presidency last July for Pakistan, I identified 3 priorities for the Council. 1, mobilizing SDG financing. 2, promoting investment in sustainable infrastructure. And 3, advancing the contribution of science and technology to the SDGs. All 3 are vital goals, which I hope can be advanced this year at the Financing for Development Forum in April, the Science and Technology and Innovation Forum in May, and the High-Level Political Forum in July. As early as April 2020, as the impact of the COVID virus was becoming visible, the Prime Minister of Pakistan called for a global initiative for debt relief. The UN Secretary General, together with the Prime Ministers of Canada and Jamaica, convened informal discussions on financing recovery from the COVID crisis. 249 options were identified, but we now need to identify and adopt some specific political decisions on the most vital actions to finance recovery from COVID and revive the endeavor to achieve the SDGs. Excellencies, at the UN General Assembly's special session, Prime Minister Imran Khan of Pakistan proposed a 5-point plan encompassing 1, debt relief and restructuring. The G20's debt suspension and common debt framework can provide a basis for more comprehensive action on debt. The DSSI must be expanded and extended. Private creditors must be persuaded to participate in such debt relief and restructuring. Two, the creation of $500 billion in new SDRs and redistribution of unutilized SDRs is vital. The recent statement by the US Treasury Secretary endorsing such SDR creation is most welcome. Three, enlarged concessional finance. The emergency finance from the IMF and World Bank has provided welcome relief, but the IMF's $1 trillion financing capacity has not been fully deployed to respond to the needs of the developing countries. The World Bank and other multilateral development banks can play a much larger role, and the 0.7% ODA target remains to be achieved. Four, mobilization of the $100 billion in annual climate finance promised by the advanced countries as part of their Paris climate commitments need to be fulfilled. There can be no green recovery without the fulfillment of this commitment. And five, a halt in the outflow of the trillions of dollars in illicit financial flows from the developing countries must be halted, and these stolen resources unconditionally returned to the host countries. The 14 recommendations of the FACTI panel must be implemented. Excellencies, the appropriate deployment of finance is equally important. Investment in sustainable infrastructure can impact 92% of the SDGs. There has been a dramatic decline of $50 billion in infrastructure investment in developing countries during the pandemic. Their investment needs are around $1 trillion each year in such sustainable infrastructure. I believe that the creation of a public-private sustainable infrastructure investment facility under the umbrella of the United Nations may be helpful in addressing the challenge of mobilizing investment in viable, sustainable infrastructure projects in the developing countries. We also need to mobilize the advances in science and technology, especially digital technologies, to enable the developing countries to leapfrog into the modern development paradigm. Excellencies, Africa is a vital part of the emerging new world. Africa's success is essential for achieving the SDGs aimed to eradicate poverty and eliminate hunger and reverse the global economic recession. As one great son of Africa, Nelson Mandela said, I quote, like slavery, like apartheid, poverty is not natural, and it can be overcome by actions of human beings, unquote. I wish you all success in your deliberations. I thank you.